2022 was a challenging year for three of the world's most powerful autocratic regimes: China, Iran, and Russia. In China, mass protests broke out against Xi Jinping's strict zero-COVID policies, marking the largest anti-government movement since the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. Protesters demanded Xi's resignation and the end of one-party rule. Despite this, the Chinese government quickly abandoned its zero-COVID strategy, but this led to a rapid spread of the virus and millions of deaths, which further eroded public trust in the regime. Meanwhile, in Iran, the death of a young woman detained by the morality police for wearing an improper hijab ignited months of protests. These protests soon grew into demands for the resignation of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and the abolition of the Islamic Republic. By the end of the year, opposition activists organized a nationwide strike, reminiscent of the events that led to the fall of the Shah in 1979. However, the most disastrous year was for Russian President Vladimir Putin. His invasion of Ukraine turned into a military and political catastrophe. Russian forces retreated from Kiev and lost ground in eastern and southern Ukraine. Western sanctions decimated Russia's economy, and with an estimated 200,000 Russian casualties, the country faced increasing isolation. Hundreds of thousands of Russians fled the country, and Putin's geopolitical influence rapidly declined. Despite these challenges, China, Iran, and Russia remain resilient. The key to their endurance lies in their revolutionary pasts. Understanding why these autocracies are so difficult to topple requires examining the nature of their rise and the sources of their continued strength. Revolutionary dictatorships differ significantly from conventional autocracies. They emerge when mass mobilization and radical social changes lead activists to take control of the state. Revolutionary regimes aim to radically transform society, abolishing private property, imposing religious laws, or remaking the social order. While such revolutions are rare, they have had a profound impact on world history, shaping events like the Cold War, the Vietnam War, and the rise of China. These regimes are often far more durable than other types of dictatorships. Their strength comes from the ideological foundations on which they are built. Revolutionary regimes typically don't seek broad popular support or international legitimacy. Instead, they often alienate large sections of their population and antagonize neighboring countries, which paradoxically helps consolidate power. Violent struggles, including civil wars and external invasions, usually weaken these regimes, but also strengthen their control by eliminating political rivals. These early violent conflicts create strong internal security forces that can suppress dissent and maintain control. How they maintain power. One of the key reasons revolutionary dictatorships endure is their ability to unite their ruling elites and establish powerful security forces. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, for example, is crucial to maintaining the regime's stability. Similarly, in Russia, the legacy of the Soviet KGB, now continued by the FSB, ensures that Putin's government remains secure by preventing opposition from gaining traction. China's Communist Party is another example. The party's rise to power was forged through revolution and civil war. Prior to 1949, China was weak and fragmented. But after the communist victory, the party built a strong, centralized state. This allowed for rapid economic growth, but also ensured that no independent civil society could emerge to challenge the government. Protests, like those at Tiananmen Square in 1989 or in 2022 against the zero-COVID policy, have not been enough to seriously threaten the regime's control. The Iranian example. Iran's 1979 revolution created a theocratic regime that faced immediate challenges, including civil war and the Iraq-Iran War. Despite these conflicts, the Iranian regime survived and consolidated power. The war with Iraq strengthened the military, particularly the IRGC, making it one of the world's most powerful forces. Despite repeated protests and a struggling economy, the Iranian regime has remained stable due to the unity within its ruling elite and the loyalty of its military forces. The government's response to popular uprisings has been brutal and unyielding, which has helped preserve its power. In this way, Iran illustrates the importance of elite unity for the survival of revolutionary regimes, Putin's Russia, and the legacy of the Soviet Revolution. Although Putin's Russia is not a revolutionary regime in the traditional sense, it still benefits from the legacy of the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution. The Soviet Union's totalitarian control over society has prevented a strong civil society from emerging, even after the USSR collapsed. Though independent economic and social forces began to grow in the late 1980s and 1990s, they remained weak, partly because the state still controlled the most lucrative sectors of the economy. Putin's power is also reinforced by Russia's security apparatus, which traces its origins to the Soviet KGB. The FSB, the modern-day successor to the KGB, is one of the most powerful security forces in the world. It helps maintain control by preventing significant opposition from forming and suppressing dissent within the military and political spheres. Why these regimes are hard to overthrow. The resilience of revolutionary regimes is rooted in the ideological unity they create among their elites and the power of their security forces. Even when these regimes face military setbacks or widespread protests, their internal security forces can rally support and suppress challenges. The fall of the Soviet Union did not erase the power structures that continue to support Putin's regime. Likewise, China and Iran maintain control by ensuring that no serious opposition can emerge, either internally or externally. These security forces, whether the IRGC in Iran, the FSB in Russia, or China's vast surveillance apparatus, are often more powerful than any potential challengers. They prevent coups, crush protests, and maintain loyalty to the regime even in the face of significant popular unrest or military defeats. The ability to use these forces to stamp out dissent is a key factor in the survival of these regimes. Conclusion: the challenge for democracies. While China, Iran, and Russia are not invincible, their revolutionary origins make them difficult to overthrow. For democracies to effectively challenge these regimes, they must focus on supporting opposition movements and defending democratic values. While these autocratic regimes are unlikely to fall in the short term, sustained international pressure, diplomatic efforts, and material support for democratic forces could eventually weaken their hold on power. In the long term, a more proactive and coordinated response from democracies could contain these revolutionary regimes and perhaps even bring about their eventual downfall.